Well, let's get started. Hello, everybody. It is my great pleasure to send a very warm welcome to tonight's HHL Expert Talk, our third HHL Expert Talk. I'm very excited to see so many of you here tonight, and I hope you've been having a very good week. So what is the HHL Expert Talk and why are we doing this? The HHL Expert Talk is a virtual talk series with which HHL aims to address key topics in research to broaden a knowledge transfer on current social, economic, and political topics led by HHL experts. To briefly introduce myself, my name is Sigrid Fischer, and I am delighted to be moderating the Expert Talk series. I studied journalism and psychology at Indiana University in the US and continued with a master's degree in science in performance psychology at the University of Edinburgh, where I also worked later on in my career. I'm now at HHL responsible for our alumni network. So before we're heading into tonight's talk, let me give you a brief overview of HHL's facts and figures. HHL was established 120 years ago in Leipzig in Germany. It is our mission to educate entrepreneurial, responsible and effective business leaders through outstanding teaching, research and practice. We're driven by excellence to benefit our students, stakeholders and the society. So where are we today? Today we have more than 700 students in our 5 programs, which are the full-time and part-time Masters of Science in Management, our full-time and part-time MBA, as well as our PhD program. We're proud to have more than 600 nations represented within our student body and an active network that contains more than 2,500 alumni. We're particularly proud that more than 300 startups were founded or co-founded by HHL alumni, and 5 of these are actually unique ones. So privately held startups with a value of more than $1 billion US. We're also happy to have strong bonds to more than 130 partner universities across the world, which are visited by our students and on their terms abroad. So it is now my great pleasure to introduce tonight's experts. First of all, Martina Beermann. Martina Beermann's approach is based on more than 30 years of job experience in HR and career development. She combines intuitive and measuring methods as well as the use of artificial intelligence tools. More than 10,000 customers on all levels already benefited from her advice. As a psychology by profession, she started her career in a boutique consultancy, worked several years for one of the biggest car manufacturers in the world before she discovered her passion for all kinds of career topics. She represents HHL in national and international HR and career expert networks, as well as a lecturer at the University of Zurich. Welcome, Martina. Our second expert for tonight is Annette. Annette Hughes is an experienced career strategist with more than 12 years of experience in the higher education industry. At HHL, she's advising and coaching full-time MSc students in all aspects of their career development process and supports students to start a fulfilling career in their desired sector and company. After finishing her degree in business administration, she spent the first 5 years of her career in London, working at a company in the e-commerce sector, as well as at a leading business school in London. I'm now very, very delighted to hand over to our 2 experts, Annette and Martina, who will be kicking off tonight's talk. So all there is to say for me is enjoy it tonight.
So, good evening, everybody. Our topic tonight is how to manage your career during the coronavirus crisis. A really hot topic, I think. And first of all, welcome to our talk and many thanks for your interest also from our part. So let's start. What's on the agenda? During the next hour, we will present you 11 tips how you can handle the situation. So the focus will be practical recommendations. And yes, not every tip will be suitable for everybody. Please be aware of it. It really depends on your starting position and your personal situation. Just pick those which seem to be right for you. Yeah, and at the very end, you will know more about the current situation in the job market, to which basic questions you should develop personal answers for your future career development, which factors are decisive for your sustainable, successful career management on the long run, what you can currently do to advance your professional development in social distancing time. Yes, that's our focus, and how HR department shapes the hiring process right now. So my first tip is take it as a challenge. We all know there are good news and there are bad news on the company sector, let's say. So what are the bad news? That's evident. There are winners and losers among the companies. The service sector is most affected globally, that's for sure, not just tourism, but the whole service sector. Yes, and right now the companies are focusing on short-term issues as they have to face a lot of challenges, governmental rules, health, safety aspects, and so on. Yes, at the moment there are less jobs in general, and yes, we observed a slowdown in the hiring process here also in Germany. But what's the good news? The good news is that the German job market, yes, is less affected right now. And I think the good thing is that these kind of situations are the best moments for innovation and fresh ideas. That's also often the advantage of a crisis. It's a moment for innovation and fresh ideas, and please be aware of it. Yes, and we can all expect after the recovery, the companies again will focus on strategic long-term issues. And one more advantage I see is particularly for those who are employed at the moment, it's really a great opportunity to be identified as a high performer with a high EQ. Yes, why that? Egon Zehner, an executive headhunting agency, find out that some companies really identify systematically high performers in times of crises, because in these times it's not just the IQ which is relevant, the EQ plays really a particular role in every situation, as there is much more communication which is sensible. Yeah, and one of the few things which is foreseeable at the moment, there is a digital shift to be expected. So the leading German investment institute, FERI, predicts a real digitization boost globally. And we can expect it particularly for processes in the service provision and work organization. And there will be a new focus on data security and the robustness of digital systems. And I can really confirm it. Some weeks ago, I received a call from Palo Alto, from a data security company, which was rather surprising for me. Yes, it was really a new situation, but yeah, it's true. And as we all experience how much we depend on digital tools for the functioning of our society, the acceptance of digital solutions will increase within our society, we think, or FERI thinks. So other aspects are, according to the German trade newspaper Handelsblatt, there's currently a real gap in the industry for leading positions, as only every sixth company has a chief digital officer on its board. It was written in March this year in the Handelsblatt. And yes, more than that, the business platform Karriere.de pointed out that the raw material extraction and processing sector, as well as life sciences and automotive engineering, have the biggest gap in their further digitization. So Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right, Henry Ford once said. And yes, in view of these extraordinary circumstances, please be aware of your emotions and beliefs. That's really important because these are the things you can still control. And yes, it influences your actions. And it works like self-fulfilling prophecy. And I think we all need optimism to get along and to succeed. Yeah, and my second tip is reflect yourself. Especially for those who don't know their career direction and particularly those who are on short-time work, it's really the best time to reflect yourself before you start to apply or make a career move just anywhere. So additionally, in this market situation, it will be harder to convince others why you should be the best candidate. So it needs more self-reflection to convince others. So what steps should you take in this process? Respectively, how can you do that? Yeah, to give our students a framework, we created a model. We called it the 5 No approach, which is divided in 5 steps. And the first step starts with your why. Rather similar to Simon Sinek's approach, he's a best-selling author and consultant. We recommend you to filter out why you want what you want. It's often deeply rooted in your life biography, and it's really worth to take a step back and to get aware which meaning certain periods had for you, starting, for example, with the favorite games you played. And the second step, know your how, is most essential, as it means to filter out your biggest talents and to turn these top talents into real strengths by focusing and practicing them. It's really the key to achieving excellent performance. And you need to be better than others to succeed in your professional life, that's for sure. And therefore, we offer specific questionnaires and personality tests to our students, yeah? And both steps, so 1 and 2, start by filtering out your emotions, yeah? These kind of questions are linked to the center of your limbic brain. And if you involve your emotions, your out of the gut decisions and passions will be better reflected and more communicable. That's why it's important. And with step 3, you start to reflect. Yes, then the analytical part of your brain is asked. And so know your what. It's really often a long journey to find out what kind of contribution you would like to give to a business, or which kind of value you could give to a company or to the world, let's say. But yesterday we had a recruiting event together with Google, and yes, it was really the same message: know your staff, know your stories, your passions, and your strengths. That's really important. Yeah. And number 4, know your where, or know where. It means as each individual is different, and it's really helpful to know which environment you need as a person to grow. I always like to compare it with an orchid. An orchid can't grow in a desert, and a cactus can't grow in a moor. And yes, every individual needs certain conditions to grow. And yes, it really influences your well-being, and this means directly your performance. And more than ever before, you should check how your career goals match with the market right now. Yeah, this step becomes more relevant right now as it is the bottleneck at the moment. Yeah, we hope it won't last, but that's at the moment. And the 5th step is know whom. It means, you may have heard, it's not all about what you know, but also about who you know. So we teach our students who to approach and how to approach other persons and how to build up positive relationships. So, and if you go through this whole process, that means when your career goals are in line with your beliefs, skill set, values, interests, it's more likely that you can achieve better performance. And according to a study from Harvard Business Reviews, especially from Professor Francesca Gino, the chance to be hired is 20% higher in comparison to other candidates who don't have an inner connections to the targeted functions. And more than that, the chance to convince investors is also much higher. That was also figured out by studies. So yes, I really believe authenticity pays off. Yeah, but perhaps let me add, according to a study, a leadership study from AMRO, only 50% of the leaders are able to describe their personal mission easily or their strengths easily, and yeah, there's a lot to improve. And now, sorry, I hand over to Annette.
Hello, everybody. Also from my side, I would like to present you today with the third tip that we have, and this is be clear with your skill set and career goals. Yeah, you might not want to lose too much time in your job search, and therefore it's important to really know your skill set and also your career goals. But at the moment, especially, be a little bit flexible on your career goals. Okay, so if we come to the next slide, you might already have one fixed idea of the type of functions you would like to do. So let's say we call it in this example a consultant. So then you note this down, okay, I want to be a consultant. In the second step, you would then see which sectors could I consult on, in which sectors could I work as a consultant, yeah? Because you can obviously have consulting firms specialized on something. So in this example, let's call it automotive, for example, or telecommunication or healthcare, yeah? The next step would then be to also see, do I want to go in-house or external consulting, and also to check which companies are actually currently still hiring. So this requires obviously a little bit of research on your side, but this is basically the steps we would recommend if you have one function in mind, really, yeah? And especially for the consulting firms, we noticed from feedback from recruiters and students at the moment that it's a little bit easier at the moment in in-house consulting firms. This obviously might change again, and hopefully it will change, but we noticed that there's a little bit of reduced hiring in the internal, in the normal external consulting firms. However, in the next slide, we'd like to show you a different model. It might be the case that you are not quite sure about, or you're not quite 100% fixed on one role that you'd like to take or function. So in this case, we do recommend you to still limit it to 3. Yeah, so write down, note down your top 3 favorite options that you'd like for a function, and also the top 3 sectors that you'd like to work in, yeah? So this is kind of, it gives you a little bit of scope, enough scope to work around and to have various options, but at the same time, it also gives you a bit of a direction and you don't get too much lost, yeah? So it's quite easy, of course. If the first option for the function doesn't work, you want to work as a consultant, but there's nothing available in automotive, telecommunication or healthcare, you then would move on, of course, to the second one and the third. So altogether, it would give you 9 options, and I think that's a good scope to work on if it comes to your job search. So it's not too much, too broad, but it's still it gives you a little bit of a different flexibility. Yeah. In the next slide, in the next model, I'd like to show you. I would like to present you with a model for a long-term sustainable career development. Okay, scientific studies have actually shown that there are 4 key elements to a sustainable career, so to a successful sustainable career, okay? On the left-hand side, you can see personal development. So this is the first key element on an individual level. So this is in alignment with your strengths, values, and interests. And this all forms the base or the basis for your performance overall, okay? If on the second key element is performance development. because the knowledge and science is currently aging so quick in this VUCA world, yeah, the lifelong learning and personal growth will be more and more important for your employability. So keep this in mind. On the organizational point of view, you want to make sure to anticipate changes, yeah, to adapt to the market that is currently around, and also look inside your company what's changing, but also on external factors. So this is a very important factor as well. And the last element for this model that we have here is network expansion. So if you do establish a broad network of trustful relationships, you will be informed much quicker about trends in the company and are also able to receive the right support, yeah, that you might need. All this set is, of course, based on a stable mindset and well-being to be able to perform in that way. Okay, so, but why is that so important to know? It's very important for your decision making. The criteria for such a decisions are obviously very individual at times, but if you have to decide between different job offers, for example, or you can take several paths within your company as a promotion, you really need to ask yourself, what could this mean for my long-term career development? Yeah, many people just jump into jobs just due to external factors, be it, for example, the name of the company or the money perhaps, yeah, but then later on they realize, maybe I got a bit lost in my own direction. And we read about studies that say that the millennial generation, will perhaps change jobs up to 20 times in their lifetime. And this is really worth thinking about. Is this something you would want? Yeah. And also employers and recruiters, they want to see a certain logic behind your career decisions. So make sure you always consider the long run or mid to long run. Okay. As the competition on the job market has increased in the last 2 months, it's really relevant to be able to answer the following questions that we have for you on the next slide. Why do you want what you want? Yeah, why do you want to work in a certain sector? Why do I want to work in a certain function? What makes you special as well, and what is your USP perhaps? And also, which problems can you solve? Okay, as some employers already told us that it has turned around a little bit. So the jobs are not just out there waiting for the candidates. Yeah, it has changed a little bit. So you really need to know yourself much better and need to know answers to these questions that I just presented to you. What we did in the last 2 weeks, we did a survey amongst alumni who graduated during the financial crisis in 2008 and 2009. So obviously they were in a somewhat difficult situation as well. And we were asking them for various feedback. And I would like to read out a statement from one of the alumni during this crisis who said, "Start by understanding which career track you would like to go for, a specific type of job, a specific industry, geography that is attractive to you. Choose your career entry point also based on your mid and long-term goals." And I have to say, I couldn't agree more to this, because this is basically what we try to teach our students as well. Have a look on the mid to long run and not just now. The fourth tip that I have today is do research, identify companies and their problems. Okay, again, I would like to start this point with another quote from an alumni from this survey, who said, pick industries and job postings that are little or not affected. For example, consulting, e-commerce topics. Use the HHL alumni network to get information on how are the companies really doing. So what does that mean? It means try to look much more behind the curtains than before. You probably always have been networking, but try to do it much more. Try to see what's really behind the curtains, not only to find out is this company currently hiring, but also do I fit to this company? Is that person fit to the company? And also, what are the perspectives at this company on the long run? Yeah. Of course, saying that you should focus on the sectors that are doing okay, you should still distinguish a little bit, and because there are major differences between companies within one sector. So you really need to act a little bit like an investigator. That means saying that set up, for example, Google Alerts for targeted companies, for trends or certain topics, follow your favorite companies, of course, on LinkedIn and Xing, join groups on social media for specific topics you might be interested in. And also, if you are an alumnus or a current HHL student, then of course you can always ask the career development department for the companies which are currently hiring, for example. So I think this is a rather easy tool to do, which quickly gets you on board of the information, also on the radar for the companies. Yeah. Also, in the next idea is also, what are the most burning problems, for example, for the companies at the moment? Yeah, which short-term issues do they have? And what are maybe solutions? Can I prepare ideas for solutions when I approach them? Yeah, this is something you could, for example, do. The more you know about companies, the more you will have an advantage when it comes to apply to these companies. Yeah. Also, an idea is, if you're at the beginning of your master studies, for example, you could try to target your master thesis later on in the direction of one of the current issues that companies have at the moment, to kind of get into this topic a bit better. Yeah. Okay. The next step would like to hand over back to Martina.
Yeah, so here I am again. So our fifth tip is build up positive relationships, networks. So companies will put more emphasis on trust when it comes to hiring new employees in the future. The number of positions filled in a non-conventional way will increase. That's what we think. And the reason is, from the corporate perspective, each new employee represents a high investment when money is tight, and that's the situation, which means that demands upon the employees regarding their performance and abilities will continue to rise. Yeah, and something we can already see happening from the feedback we received from employers or recruiters. So the membership to a particular professional community becomes much more relevant than before. And yes, also in normal times, corporate leaders tend to search within the environment of their own company as a first step before they publish a job offer, because they try to find candidates who meet their criteria and in particular are considered as trustworthy, as HR studies have shown that the fluctuation is significantly lower for positions filled with candidates that were filled the conventional way. And yes, particularly the employees of a company can often assess a potential candidate very well, judging from previous collaboration or encounters. So therefore, many companies have a hire a friend models in place. Like we heard yesterday evening, Google has, Dell has, and there are much more. So yeah, the success rate for hirings by referrals for academics particularly is about 59%. So it's really worth, try to get a foot into the door by a referral, by the hidden job market, as we say. And if you start right now, it really gives you an advantage in the recovery phase, yes. And more than that, it's really a good base for your career advancement on the long run. So an application submitted by recommended candidates can mean to enter a fast track for a job searcher. Yeah, that's you should be aware of that. It's worth going this way. Yeah. So, but one thing you should never do when you try to approach people in the companies, don't ask, do you have a job for me directly? Why that? Yeah, it's the situation. Why that? It puts too much pressure on the other person, and it could be a reason not to answer you. Somehow they will know that it has a certain background, yeah? So what we recommend is to position yourself as somebody who has to share something, for example, on LinkedIn or via email, or just ask for insights or advice. Yeah, there are people who love to help. And yes, and really very important is to build rapport first. That means to show your interest for the other person, not just acting in an egocentric way, I would say. And your goals should be to gain information, to get an advantage later on. So here we created some example emails. For example, this is from Clara to Robert. Hey, I'm Clara, a fellow HHL MBA. I'm currently doing research about how to optimally ensure network digital communication between the various logistics partners. Would you like to share your experience with me in a phone call? Yeah. And I had already first theoretical insights from other companies who deal with similar topics, and your personal view would be greatly appreciated. So, yes, what's behind it? Steve Dorton, an American top career expert in this field, says, yes, first write fewer than 75 words in your mail, for example, because everybody is overwhelmed with information every day. And the less words you use, the higher the chance that the right people will answer. Yeah, if it's short, they are also willing to answer you from their mobile, just between two meetings or something like that. And the more information you send, the higher the likelihood that people answer you because they feel they have to. Yes, but these people often don't really have the intentions to help you, and this is the situation you should avoid. So your intention should be to eliminate the number of responses by this type of persons. He calls them obligates. That means they are just driven by guilt. And yes, you should try to identify the real boosters who are driven by altruism, let's say. Yeah, and the second rule is state your connection first, yeah, as here directly in the beginning, and ask for advice by a question. Yeah, the likelihood that you will answer is higher than if you put a question. And yes, focus more on the contact and not about you. Yeah, then they feel more respected, more appreciated. That's the base. Yeah, here's another one, more formally, yeah, sent by somebody who is the same also member in a LinkedIn marketing solutions group. It follows the same patterns as you can see. Yeah. Yeah, and the last example was really created by a student and we really liked it, so I will read it again. So, hi Louisa, my name is Fred and I'm just completing my master's degree in general management at HHL. I realized on LinkedIn that you've made an impressive career at Bertelsmann. I'm really interested to learn more about your past. Might I chat a few minutes with you to ask you some questions? Quite easy, so yeah. Please let me know. If so, your insight would be extremely valuable for me. Yeah, so it's very polite and yeah, I think, yeah, full of compliments. It's the way it works very often. Yeah, but in general, we often ask ourselves, why do so many people hesitate to network as everybody recommends it? Yes, is it more will than skill or what else? Yeah. Is it the fear of rejection or is it a question of a certain personality type? And yeah, some months ago I found an answer, from the Ohio State University. So Professor Tanya Menon from this university found out that people who feel in a low socioeconomic status tend to reach inwards. That means they don't network that much. anticipating perhaps a rejection that they can stand as they feel more vulnerable. They tend to isolate themselves more, and people who feel to be in a high status position, in contrast, tend to much more to activate their networks. So if you've lost your job or you just don't feel very comfortable in the company you are already working, that may influence your status feeling. So the question is, how can we overcome these inner obstacles? So one effective method they found out is to write down all your LinkedIn and Facebook friends you already have, you feel comfortable with, that gives you a better feeling, or to write down the things you love and or you're proud of. For example, your pets or your family, the membership to a basketball team or to the fire brigade or whatever it is. Yeah? That's it. So, number 6, our 6th tip is create routines. It means, there is nothing good unless it results in continuous action. Quite easy. So please plan it like a project manager. Yes, create a list of targeted companies which are currently hiring, search for advocates and set up a ranking to do it systematically. Do, for example, research about companies twice a week for 30 minutes. I think that's realizable. And if you send out 2 emails a day, yes, at the end of the week you will have sent out 10 emails. It's quite a considerable number if you plan it like that and yes, divide it into pieces. Yeah. And yes, here I hand over again to Annette.
Thank you, Martina. The next piece of advice I have is charge your batteries. Rome was also not built in a day, so the same really applies to your job search. Of course, there will be times when you will be discouraged because things didn't work out in the first attempt that you were doing. But then in this case, just maybe take a step back and also take a break. Yeah. And try to watch it also from a different perspective, for example, from the bird perspective, which you can see on our next slide here. I would like to go back to the survey that I mentioned before, which we did amongst alumni who graduated during the financial crisis in 2008 and 2009. And we did ask them, what was the effect of the financial crisis on your personal careers? And we actually found out that 60% said there was no effect. There was no good effect, but there was also no bad one, so it was neutral, which I think in the current situation is actually okay. But 33% actually said they had a positive effect, and 7% even a very positive effect on their career despite the crisis, basically, yeah, because they perhaps just also were flexible in their approaches. And with this, I would like to give you another quote from one of the alumni that answered us in this survey. And he said, "Don't panic. Be flexible. Use the time to appreciate other things in life as well. Worst case, your career will get postponed by a year. HHL is still a great entry ticket, but your career will depend much more on how you perform on the job." And I think this is something we'd like to share with you, to see it from a different perspective, perhaps as well. And of course, we know that the crisis can't be translated one-to-one now, that this is a different crisis, but we still hope that it gives you a little bit of hope and perspective, and to be a bit more positive that there were other crises before and people got out of it if they were flexible enough and were focused as well. The 8th piece of advice, the 8th tip that I'd like to give you is analyze the most frequent keywords in job descriptions, especially now when the competition got a little bit more and it just got a little more competitive than maybe before. It is important to really put more effort into your application documents than before. And there are, especially HR departments at the moment, very, very busy. So they have to deal with, first of all, much more applications coming in, but also deal with a lot of other concerns companies have, be it like short-time work, safety of their staff members. and so on. So they have little time to really identify your key skills in a CV. So it has to be obvious from the start, and then it's much more likely that you get picked, okay? But there are many nice tools out there online, artificial intelligence tools, where you could, for example, use a keyword optimizer, yeah? And one of them is, for example, Skill Syncer that we have used at HHL recently. So there you can, for example, upload several job descriptions and also upload your CV at the same time. And once you uploaded your CV, the tool will identify the keywords missing from your CV in comparison to the specific job description, yeah? Or it also will tell you, okay, here's a match, but here's actually room for improvement. So you get a good starting point to how to improve your CV or which other measures you should take. And this is obviously increasing your chances much more for an invitation to a job interview at the moment, yeah? And with this, I hand back to Martina.
Yeah. Hello. So our 9th recommendation is be prepared, particularly for video interviews. Yes, as the majority of the HR department naturally switched to remote interviews, yes. And according to the statements of recruiters, the most common sources of interference are technical problems or distractions from other people. So keep your loved ones informed and check the connections first, yeah? So to make a good first impression. But much more than that, really do your homework. Many people take it rather easy when they are invited to an interview, and I can only sensitize you, don't take it too easy. Some people just tell us after they didn't get a job offer, yes, I had an interview, but nothing happened afterwards. That's sad, because there is really no second chance for a first impression. And really train it not to learn it by heart, but particularly to get feedback. And everybody has some blind spots. We experience it nearly every day. And I can promise you, nobody leaves our office without suggestions how to optimize his self-presentation. Annette, yeah? Yeah. And
Totally agree.
Yeah. And yeah, here story, yeah, I had last year. For example, last year I met a student who was just at the beginning of his studies in the part-time program, and he was invited by his dream employer for an interview already in the beginning, which is rather unusual. And so he trained it together with me, but already weeks before he checked all the possible questions, noted them on flip chart paper, put it on the wall in his apartment and trained it with his buddy. And yes, he made it, and it was really amazing. He was so happy afterwards. And by the way, conscientiousness is one of the few indicators for professional success in the famous Big 5 test. So yeah, but it's really important to stay authentic. Yeah. And yeah, number 10 is demonstrate appreciation and stay connected. I think this is one of the things that many people underestimate, respectively neglect, because they just focus on their short-term goals, getting a job quickly. But it's the most important step to build up a trustful relationship. And as I mentioned already in the beginning, a broad network of trustful relations is one of the 4 key elements, or Annette mentioned 4 key elements for a sustainable career. And also, if you think, I won't need him or her anymore, you never know. You always meet twice in your life. Life is long. Yeah. And here are some examples how you could proceed. So yes, just expressing your gratitude or offering a favor, vice versa, or just giving some interesting information. I think that's really easy. And according to studies from Professor Adam Grant, who's a management professor at Wharton, givers are more successful than takers. So, yeah, be aware of this. And if you contact the person later on when you discover a job posting you could like to apply for, it also increases your chances to receive valuable information. And I think it's most likely that the person will answer you if he or she feels appreciated. Yes, it's a step-by-step process, building up a relationship. Yeah. And now I hand over to Annette, who will present you the last tip.
That's right. Thank you very much, Martina. So the 11th tip today is the last one as well, bridge the gap. Yeah, of course, you might be in a situation where you get not as quick a job offer as you anticipated. You were hoping to get one quicker and it takes much longer. But what could you do in this case? You could try to think about your plan B and apply piecemeal tactics, as we call it. Yeah. So there are several options you could choose from. You could boost your skill set, for example, by attending online courses, for example. Especially, you might have found a gap between your skill set and job descriptions that you're targeting. So maybe think about which skill sets do I still perhaps need and try to attend online courses. There are many very good courses out there, and I think this would be one option, of course. Of course, you could also volunteer in a sector where support is needed, for example, in city authorities or healthcare institutions at the moment. I'm very sure this would leverage your CV, and your engagement in these kind of times will really be appreciated by recruiters later on. You could also try to get the foot into the door of a company by working on a project base. Yeah, so rather than maybe getting full-time jobs, companies might just recruit on a project basis, and this is maybe a chance to step into the company as well and get to know us and get the foot into the door later on for a full-time position. Another idea is also perhaps thinking about further education. You might want to maybe think about, I do a PhD first of all, or I try to maybe do another MBA if you have only done an MSc so far or something like this. Yeah, further education is always a good idea. And also, of course, start thinking about, could I be a freelancer, or could I start my own business? Yeah, this is also something, a time to try really out now. And I'd like to close this last point or last tip that we have with a really nice quote from one of our alumnus that we asked also in the survey that I mentioned before. And he was basically saying, he was founding actually a company during the crisis or the end of his study in the middle of the crisis. And he was saying, my rationale was, what better time to take the risk and uncomfort of starting your own business when your comfort zone is not yet that big and your cost of living as a student are the lowest they will likely ever be in your career? If I know now that I want to found my own business at some point, why not? Yeah, why wait? I think this is a very, very nice quote, and it's really something worth thinking about if you're a person who's maybe always considered a little bit of starting your own business. Okay, this was the last tip from our side, and Martina will summarize it again for you now in the last step.
Yes, so let's summarize. What did we tell you? So our first tip was take it as a challenge. It's your emotions and your way of thinking which determine how you succeed. This was number one. Number two is our 5 no approach helps you to get the answers you should ideally develop for your career development. So reflect yourself. Yes, number 3 means be clear with your skill set and career goals. The more clear you are, the better you will be able to convince others. Yeah. And number 4, sure, do research, identify companies and their problems. The more background information you will have, the better your decisions and the better will be your position in a job interview. And number 5, build up positive relationships and network. It makes sense to consider this as a personal investment in the long run, yes? And number 6, create routines. They help you to stay tuned And number 6 is enjoy life, encourage yourself by taking a bird's eye perspective, so to charge your batteries. And tip number 8, analyze most frequent keywords in job descriptions. This is most important for a targeted career planning. Yeah, and number 9, be prepared for video interviews and interviews in general. And yeah, number 10, demonstrate appreciation and stay connected. I think it doesn't cost you anything and it has such a high impact. And yes, our last tip, bridge the gap, develop a plan B. If it doesn't work out directly, look for alternatives to get a foot into the door. Yeah, and last not least, be aware. There are more people who surrender than those who fail. Henry Ford said something similar centuries ago, nearly a century ago. So don't surrender, act. This is most important right now. And yeah, at the very end, I would really like to emphasize, awaken the tiger in you. Everybody has a little tiger inside. Keep a close eye on your goals. Plan your steps strategically. Connect with other people and then just jump. Yeah, that's it from our part. So thank you for your intentions. And here I hand over to Sigrid if you have any questions.
First of all, thank you very, very much, Martina and Annette. That was very, very insightful. So thank you for taking the time and for all those insights. As Martina already mentioned, we're opening to questions now, and we will do it the following way. I will read out the questions, and Martina and Annette will respectively answer those depending on who wants to say something. So first question, here we go. If you are already at a good position at a large automotive company in the in-house consulting team, how do you progress fast to a management position in that environment if there are lots of other talented people around you?
Oh, that's a good question. So if it's not by performance, I would do it via networking. So try to be visible, write down your successes. I would recommend you write down a success diary, for example, so that you are able to communicate your successes. Try to work as efficient as you can. For example, there is a matrix which was developed by Stephen Covey. I can recommend you. Yeah, and what else? Annette, do you have an idea? These were my spontaneous ideas. Yeah.
Yeah, my idea was actually to really to build a network within the company. Yeah, to really try to long-term speak to the important people that are important as well, and people that can maybe also support you in this step. So the networking, if you can't distinguish yourself via the skills, because you mentioned there's a lot of talented people around you, then I would try to show my enthusiasm also by keeping a close network, because that shows that you're like a very interested candidate or interested employee who's reliable as well. People then know you, that you're reliable if you keep in touch with them. So this would be my recommendation as well, actually, Martina.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, you two. Just one technical thing, Martina, if you would stop sharing your screen, then we can actually put both of you in the picture so that we can see both experts tonight. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. So here we go with the second question. What do you think about doing an internship until October, November, for example, to overcome this difficult period for finding a job? Could that be a good idea, or would you say rather not?
Martina, should I answer this?
Yes, yeah.
I think this was a question from Giacomo. Thank you very much. I personally think it's not a super bad idea. Of course, it depends a little bit where you're staying at the moment. If you have already graduated, of course, your plan would be to find a full-time job. But I personally don't necessarily see it as the wrong step. It's more like a side step, because you might be able to find out what other interested industries are out there and to maybe take a different perspective for your job search. Yeah, if this helps you to bridge this gap because simply you cannot find anything, it's not necessarily a bad idea. It just shows that you're like proactive, that you're okay, you're thinking outside the box. Okay, my plan was perhaps to start full-time job offers, but I couldn't find anything or anything suitable, so then I do an internship. And I really have to say, recruiters will also look at the year 2020 with a very different angle. No one will say afterwards, why did he do still an internship when he was finished? Because recruiters know, okay, this was the very bad year. Everyone knew it was the COVID-19 crisis, so recruiters will be looking much more flexible on that. So I think it's not per se a bad idea. And also gives you a bit of time to also monitor the market, what will happen in like the next months as well. Yeah, you can also see it a little bit as a plan A and B. If you plan A is full-time position, but if this doesn't work out, give yourself a deadline, and then of course consider this also as a plan B. Yes, of course, I'd say. Okay, I hope this answered the question.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Next question. Does the recruiting process take more time during the crisis, do you think? Does it take more time until candidates receive an answer after an interview? What do you think is a usual response time? I see both of you nodding.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
Martina, go ahead. What do you think?
Yes, in fact, there is a slowdown. Yes, many students told us, we really know it. Yes, if you didn't get an answer, I would try to reach out after 2 weeks, for example, but don't too much pressure on them. Show empathy if you call them or if you send out an email. Yes, but there is a slowdown because I have so many other problems to solve at the moment. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I
Thank
agree.
you very much.
But the normal time I read in statistics for hiring, yes, from the publishing of the job offer till hiring, except consultancies, I would say is 3 months in general.
Okay. Thank you. Now we've got a question on having a startup and then going back into work. And the exact question is, if starting a business during this crisis, let's say, to give time to try to develop for the next 2 years ends up being a failure or not going well, let's say it like that. After the failure, one decides then to search for a job again. How would recruiters, employers take for these kind of candidates? How would they view these candidates?
Do you want me to answer, Martina? Or?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, we can see what else you have to say. I think they perceive it very well, actually, because what recruiters want to see is they don't mind if a startup fails. Yeah, they want to have people that have an entrepreneurial spirit, that really are hands-on and they're like trying things out. So even if you start a business now and it fails, it will certainly not be looked at as a failure as such. It will more be looking like he is a proactive or she's a proactive person and he's taking the risk and entrepreneur. So I think this is really something not bad at all. People actually look good on this kind of experience because they want to also have entrepreneurs. Yeah? They want entrepreneurs within companies. And of course, as an entrepreneur, you have struggled with a lot of problems and you have solved a lot of problems, even if the whole startup overall didn't work out. But you managed to get your path through a lot of difficulties. So I think this is something highly, highly appreciated actually by recruiters and will never look bad on your CV 2 years later on if you then go back to a full-time position. I would dare saying we had a lot of alumni in the past as well. I don't know if Martina can say something to this, that had similar problems, that failed and then they went back into a corporate and no problem really.
Yeah, I had already several cases like that, yes, who did their business didn't work out, and they applied, they had a good profile, yes, they could prove they had a certain expertise in certain fields, and no, they didn't have problems.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. There's more and more questions flying in, so here's the next one. What do you think about COVID-19, its impact on job opportunities in academia, such as at a postdoc level?
I can't say at the moment. I don't have any idea. I didn't, we have to check it. Yeah, we didn't, conduct a poll concerning these kind of topics. I can't really say. Yeah.
So what I would recommend to the person asking this question, email the career development team again, and they can get back to you on that with a bit of research.
Yeah, that would be the best way. Yeah.
Perfect. Then we'll go to the next question. How is it possible to build a C-side network? So anything on a C level. So the network that, would get me into a CEO, CSO, CPO position. How do you think is that possible?
I think, yes, I thought most of the time already about the first question. It goes into the same direction. I think what's really important is also to have a mentor. Yes, that's what studies show, that people who step up the career ladder rather quickly, they had often not just one mentor, but several mentors, for example. Yes. And yes, try to gain more information than others. For example, that's also a reason to network, because it gives you an advantage in comparison to others. Try to figure out where the important people meet. For example, my former boss at the Ford Motor Company, for example, he was genius in this kind of topics. He only booked flights on our international flight line, or aviation, line, when our board members booked the flight, so he checked it before, things like that. Yes, you should be close to this kind of people and build trust. I think research showed that the higher the position, the more trust is a factor, and the more similarity is a factor. So if you know the same wine bars, for example, it's quite simple, but or the same golf places, things like that, these are factors. And yes, I think there are some booster clubs, for example, like Rotary, where you can only get in via recommendation. Yes, I was, for example, a member in the Lions Club for several years, just because one neighbor recommended me. Yes, so if you are close to important people, just ask them. Very often these clubs are looking for people. Yes. That's really, they don't have enough members at the moment. Yes, and I would also take the opportunity to participate at panel discussions, offer yourself as a speaker in certain congresses, so that everybody knows you have a certain expertise in a certain field.
Okay. Perfect. Next question, Annette, if you want to answer this one.
Okay.
As an older English job seeker here with experience in business development and marketing, what would your advice for finding a job position here in Leipzig be, especially given my limited German and lack of professional qualifications?
Okay, thanks for this question. It depends a little bit, first of all, how flexible you are as well. Yeah. My very, very first advice would actually be, because you mentioned a limited German, is to really do intensive German courses. Yeah, it sounds quite simple, but we do notice that the students that reach a certain German level, and it's never too late to start. Yeah, even if you're maybe already a little bit older, so to speak. To really, like, it improves your chances incredibly. Yeah, it improves your chances incredibly. So that would be, especially now, could be one of these gaps that you could fill by taking the time to a summer intensive course or something like this. Yeah, really like a 2 months intensive course or 3 months to really get that maybe German language level a little bit up to scratch. because really we see it every year, the students that have reached a certain level, and no one expects it to be an absolute native level, but to show really I am willing to learn the language, the local language, gives you much more chances. Yeah, so this would be the actual very first advice I would give to you. Also, like I said before, it depends how flexible you are, because for example, we are in close cooperation with the Spin Lab, for example, and they mentioned to us recently again, they have obviously a big network of startups. Yeah, this is what I'm saying. I don't know if startup is of interest to you, but they have very good interesting positions, especially in business development and marketing. And they said to us recently, the CEO of the Spin Lab, which is Gary Weber, he said, our startups and our circle of startups, previous startups we had, they're certainly still recruiting for both, for internships and also for full-time positions. So they actually not going down necessarily in their recruiting. So this is something especially here for Leipzig, because one has to really admit Leipzig is obviously not super easy, because the language is really more German here, I would say. If you go to Frankfurt or Berlin, it's perhaps a little bit more flexible. But if you really look a little bit in the e-commerce scene here as well, then I think if you're flexible and open for this, then the chance is certainly higher. I mean, we ourselves know also a lot of English native speakers who live here and have good jobs. Yeah, you have to really identify the companies, and there are websites out there where you can find out very easily which companies are hiring English speakers. Yeah, or also go to local.de, I think it's called. It's a website where you can filter for to town, in this case Leipzig, and see if there's anything there. Yeah, but I would do this, and also at the same time we keep repeating, but it's really to network. Just find out on LinkedIn who's working in this position that you're interested in, just to get some insights. How does this person maybe got this job? Especially maybe look out for internationals in Leipzig, yeah, using LinkedIn or even Xing or social media to find out how did they do their way, how did they do their path, and yeah, and learn German would be my advice. I don't know, Martina, is there anything you would like to add?
Yeah, that is perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much.